thank you so much for inviting me out here. I absolutely love talking about wellness and exercise and nutrition and health. And I will take any opportunity to talk. I'm told that we're done in an hour, and I could talk seriously all afternoon, but I'm going to kind of limit myself. My students have trained me well to keep it to the time frame. And I'm actually going to leave some time at the end for questions, because I'm sure there are things you want to know about. Maybe things based on what I'm going to tell you, but maybe just some other things about nutrition and health and exercise and wellness that you're confused about or curious about. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have. So I will definitely leave some time for that. So I want to talk today about 5 key steps, or sometimes I call it 5 pillars of good health. 5 things that have to be in place, I think, for you to achieve optimal health and well-being. And I'm going to work my way through. Some of them are pretty obvious and others might not be, and I'm going to kind of work through them. If you have questions along the way, feel free to stop me, or if you want to hang on to questions until the end, that's fine too. So the real question, I think, is what do we mean by health, right? And when you think about someone who's healthy or someone who's not healthy, that can take an awful lot of different forms. And sometimes you see people like the gentleman eating the salad. He's obviously in really good shape and seems to be eating well. But sometimes you see people who look healthy but are eating poorly. Or maybe they look healthy but they also smoke on the side. And is the looking healthy more important than the other thing that's going on? And sometimes you see people who look unhealthy but they're doing things that are very healthy. That make them, in my field, we call it metabolic health. And there's a lot of research that goes into being overweight and fit. And it turns out that people who are overweight but physically fit actually have lower risk of diabetes and other diseases. They tend to live longer, even than people who are what we would consider to be normal weight but who don't exercise. So this idea of what is healthy, it can come in many different forms, and there's no one ideal place to be, but it's a journey, and so you move on this path, and many of you are involved in the wellness program, and so for the next 6 months, the idea is that you're going to be kind of going through this evolution of adopting healthy behaviors and reinforcing ones that you already have, and you're going to get to some healthier, better version of yourself at the end, even if you don't get to some ideal version of health. So the idea of what is healthy then gets us to how do you get there, right? Well, I think it comes down to 5 things. I think that the 5 things that you really need to do, first of all, is don't smoke. Second is smart eating. I like to use the word smart rather than healthy, because as soon as you talk about healthy eating means 100 different things to 100 different people. And then there's 100 different things it could mean too. But I'll kind of give you some ideas of how to maybe, instead of focusing on so much the individual things you eat, maybe what you can do to put together a diet in a smarter way. Obviously, activity and movement. I'm an exercise physiologist, so I won't go anywhere without talking about physical activity and exercise. Stress, I want to talk about stress and sleep. I think these are 2 aspects of health that get ignored an awful lot. That are as important as the others, and we're learning more and more about that. And then number 5, making it work for you. All of this information is meaningless if you can't put it in some form where you can actually use it. So that's kind of the journey I want us to go on for the next little bit here. So we'll start with don't smoke. Smoking is bad. I think it would be hard to find anyone who doesn't know that. Many people smoke even though they know it's bad. It is an incredibly difficult thing to change. I have never been a smoker, but I've worked in smoking cessation programs, and I appreciate that it is easier said than done to quit smoking, but it is incredibly important. The health impacts of smoking are well established and serious, and I think smoking is different than other health habits, negative health habits, in that it affects other people directly. Right, so environmental tobacco smoke can affect friends and family members. Even there's research now showing that the chemicals in the cigarette smoke can be stored in clothing fibers and in upholstery and fabrics in the home. So someone who smokes at work and then goes home and doesn't smoke in the house is bringing those chemicals in on their clothing and potentially sharing them with family members. And there is some evidence that young children who crawl around on the floor a lot can actually get these chemicals in their bloodstream in remarkably high levels just from that exposure. So really, if you smoke, quit. There are some good over-the-counter medications. Nicotine replacement is recommended for almost everybody. There are some good prescription drugs that can really help. But beyond that, it really does take a lot of effort and support of friends and family. And maybe it comes down to getting a friend and giving them a sharp, pointy stick to follow you around. But it really, or maybe you can be the person to carry the sharp, pointy stick for someone. But it really is important, and it's worth going through that effort, I think. Again, much easier said than done, but absolutely necessary. I put it first on the list for this reason. The orange bars here are what are called the actual causes of death. So periodically, there are reports released on what are the diseases or causes of death among Americans. Heart disease ranks number 1. Cancers rank number 2, a close second, and down the list from there. But some researchers look at what are the underlying factors behind those causes of death. So the people who die from heart disease, what is it that's causing the heart disease that they die from? Or the people who die from cancer, what's causing that? And so the most recent data we have is for the year 2000. And what we see is that tobacco is, and that's cigarette smoking mostly, is responsible for the largest number of deaths. So the reason I put that number 1 on the list is because it is a common problem and it is serious. And imagine if we could just do away with that orange bar. That would reduce the number, certainly the number of deaths on a yearly basis. I guess everyone's going to die eventually. But we can push that day off to a later time for sure. In my area of interest with nutrition and activity and exercise and obesity, that factors in the second bar right below tobacco. So a lot of times you hear people say obesity is the second leading cause of death behind smoking, right? And that's where that comes from. Because when you take poor nutrition and you combine it with inactivity, that's what creates obesity. So that's where that comes from. And what this does is it shows us that these lifestyle factors are really important. So tobacco is number 1 on my list for that reason. Next, eat smart. What we know and have known for a long time and continue to learn more about almost every day is the importance of good nutrition for good health. The importance of good nutrition for preventing disease, for treating disease, for supporting activity. Anyone who's active needs energy to supply that activity. And depending on what you do, you might have specific needs. So if you think of athletes, Olympians, their energy needs are very high. And if you remember from the Olympics years back, famously, somebody recorded what Michael Phelps, the swimmer, ate in a day, and it was 10,000 calories and 2 pizzas and a whole ridiculous amount of food. I mean, any of us eat that, and we're in big trouble. But someone who trains for 6 to 8 hours a day needs a lot of fuel for that activity. And if you remember that, on that list of foods that he ate, not many of them would be really considered what we would traditionally think of as healthy choices. And I think that that's a good example of the fact that if you're active enough, you can kind of get away with eating whatever you want. The problem comes in when you're not active enough, then what you're eating becomes really important. And I will tell you that this idea of what to eat is almost the most confusing thing to figure out. The smoking was easy. Don't do it. It's bad. Physical activity and exercise. It's good. Do it. But with nutrition, what are you supposed to eat and what are you not supposed to eat? And it seems like every day we're hearing what used to be good for us is now bad for us. And then what was bad for us is now good for us. And are we going to change our minds again in another 5 years? I mean, what do you do? So I think to kind of simplify this, I'll give you this idea of eating smart. It's eat food, right? Eat real food. Much of what we eat in restaurants and fast food and snack foods, and even at home, are prepackaged, highly processed foods, right? When I think of real food, I think of as close as you can get to the way it came off the farm, right? And I think when you look at healthy diets, and you see all the time, the Mediterranean diet. Have you guys heard of the Mediterranean diet? Lots of olive oil and wine and fish, and we're supposed to eat it. It's supposed to make us healthy because people in the Mediterranean region do that. And that's true, and I buy all of that. But one thing they don't tell you is that when those studies were done, the people in the Mediterranean region also were very active. So it's part the diet and it's part the activity that work together. I think if you just started pouring olive oil on all your food, you wouldn't achieve Mediterranean health, because you've got to have the whole package. And this is what makes it so complicated and confusing. Well, when you look at these diets, the Mediterranean diet, for example, what they found when they studied that is the people ate more real food. It was a lot less processed and prepackaged foods. So they were using ingredients in cooking to make food and to eat it, which is different than a lot of the way that we eat, right? Even when a lot of times making meals at home, it's the package in the freezer that you open up, pour in the pan, and heat up and serve to your family. Well, that's processed food. That's very different than cooking from scratch, which takes a very long time, which is why nobody likes to do it, right? But I think that's probably the big departure that we've made in our diet over the years is you pick up a package of food and you read do you have any label readers in the room? I'm a label reader. My kids are turning into label readers. And if you read the ingredients, a lot of times they're things you can pronounce, but much of the time it looks like a chemistry experiment gone awry. That's not real food, right? I mean, if you pick up something in a package, you should be able to identify what's in it. And when you start seeing words that take up 3 lines on the ingredient list that you can't pronounce, you've gone away from real food one step, right? And I think that the biggest change in the American diet over time that's been consistent with this obesity, diabetes, heart disease epidemic is the processed food we eat. It's everywhere. So eating real food. I think limiting added sugars and salt is a way to help you get away from processed food. You would not believe the amount of salt that's added to processed food. You would not believe the amount of sugar that's added to processed food. I was noticing this the other night. We had some ranch dressing on our dining room table. And I handed it to my son, and we talk about sugar a lot. I think he would eat candy for every meal if I let him. So I point out where sugar is, and I handed him the bottle and had him read the ingredients. He said, "Oh my gosh, I never knew there was sugar in salad dressing." And I said, "Yeah, why would there be sugar in salad dressing?" Makes it taste better. Okay, so a little aside here. Ranch dressing. Has anyone ever made ranch dressing at home? I tried it once. You start with buttermilk. And then you add in herbs and spices and so forth, right? If you read the label, and you can actually, if you have an old cookbook, The Joy of Cooking, for example, would have a recipe in it. When you read the label for ranch dressing, the first ingredient is probably some kind of vegetable oil. And then there's some kind of milk solids or whey protein additives. And it's not even what it's supposed to be anymore. It's really processed foods. Now, ranch dressing is delicious, and I don't expect anyone to give up ranch dressing. But my point is that even things we think of as real food have taken a step away from being real food. If you asked your grandmother back in the day, make me some ranch dressing, it would not be what you get in the bottle of Kraft ranch dressing. She wouldn't even have most of that stuff in her kitchen. So in a way to do this is look for added sugars and salt. Sugar is in almost everything. Added salt is in almost everything. I was listening to something on NPR yesterday. It turns out that maybe sugar, so when you think of salt, you're thinking blood pressure, right? You eat salt, your blood pressure goes up. Reduce salt, your blood pressure goes down. In reality, for most people, the change is really pretty small. And now there's some research showing that eating more sugar or eating less has a bigger effect on blood pressure than even salt content. So one way to kind of get yourself toward eating real food is look on the ingredient list, and if you start seeing added sugars, and usually they don't call it sugar, right? They call it corn syrup or high fructose corn syrup or any number of different things. You're eating a food that's been processed, that's been changed from what it used to be. And in many cases, unnecessarily. I think that the sugar and salt thing has another impact in addition to kind of the processing. It changes what we expect food to taste like. right? My kids for a while didn't like orange juice. It tasted sour, they said. But what they loved was orange juice, which is the orange drink, Sunny D, High C, something like that, which, if you break it down to what's in there, it's orange soda without bubbles. It's water, it's sugar, it's orange flavoring and orange color. It's orange soda without bubbles. So they drink that, and they call it orange juice, and that's what orange juice should taste like. And when they drink real orange juice, which actually has a lot of naturally occurring sugar in it, they say it tastes sour. Salt is the same way. Salt is added to so much food that when we taste a food without it, we think it tastes bad, right? It changes our perception of food and makes it difficult for us to eat real food. And I think if you're interested in controlling your weight, whether that's managing your weight where it is now or losing weight, portion sizes are key. I always tell people, whenever someone says, I'm going to go on a diet, give me some advice, my first advice is eat less total food. It's confusing and complicated to change the individual foods you eat, but one thing you can do for sure is use a smaller plate, and you go to a restaurant, put half in a to-go box right away. Eat less food. Our portions are huge, and we end up eating a lot of really bad food. And so that's the kind of the weight control aspect of this. I will tell you this, if you eat real food, your chance of overeating is a lot lower. Because when you eat real food that doesn't have lots of added sugar in it, and you're eating real food that requires you actually chew it for a while, it slows you down a little bit, and you actually feel full sooner. But when you eat a lot of food that contains a lot of processed ingredients, especially processed grains, you can eat a lot before your brain gets a signal that you're full. So eating real food will help you reduce the amount you eat because you'll feel fuller sooner, right? So you can kind of put all these together, I suppose. Well, nobody talks about smart eating just for the sake of smart eating. It's always tied to some kind of diet, right? There's the low-fat, high-carbohydrate diets that we're told we're supposed to eat, and then there are the high-fat, low-carbohydrate diets that people tell us not to eat, but everyone seems to lose weight on and love following. And then there's paleo diets and vegetarian diets, and there's 1,000 different kinds. There's blood type diets and glycemic index diets and a whole host of things. And there's nothing necessarily right or wrong with any of these, but they don't a lot of times address the issue of eating real food, which is what you need to do to get to this endpoint. For example, the low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet that's been pushed by the government and people, including me, over the years, contains a lot of very processed foods. I mean, many of the processed foods we have were created to meet this high-carbohydrate, low-fat diet that we're supposed to eat, which kind of leads us in the wrong direction. Right? The advice might have been good. I mean, one sure way to cut out calories is to get rid of fat that you're eating because it contains a lot of calories, but it might take us in the wrong direction. There's no magic answer in any one of these. And if you look at people who follow the paleo diet or are vegetarians or eat a low carbohydrate, high fat diet and do it successfully and are healthy, those people tend to include a lot of real food in what they eat. You can't do these diets and be healthy if you're eating prepackaged foods. You've got to get the real food in there. So there's no magic bullet. Really, any diet will work, but the goal is make sure it includes food. Probably the best advice of what to eat came from a book cover, a book called In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan. If you like reading geeky books about food and nutrition like I do, this is an excellent book. It kind of brings us back to the fact that we eat food, not nutrients, but what we're told to eat is nutrients, not food, right? Most recommendations are get this many grams of carbohydrate and this percent of your calories from fat. But when you sit down to dinner, you're not looking at as how many percent of daily calories from fat is on my plate right now. You think, oh my gosh, I've got a steak and potatoes here. This looks really good. So it brings us back to food. And what he has on the cover, it says, eat food, not too much, mostly vegetables. For a variety of reasons, he believes that we should eat more vegetables and less meat and animal products. From a health standpoint, that is not necessarily necessary. You can be very healthy and not eat animals, or you can be very healthy and eat animals. But the eat food not too much, I think, really captures it, and would solve a lot of problems. Another thing I saw is this right here. If it comes from a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, don't. Right? So this gets us to this idea of processed food. I would change plant, though, to make this more all-encompassing and put farm. Right? You should strive to eat food that is close to how it existed on the farm as you can. And just think of the difference between, I don't know, canned green beans or green beans you get if you have a garden at home, or tomatoes are a great example. The tomato you get at the grocery store that started its life in South America and spent a week and a half on a boat and then another week in a truck and who knows how long in a refrigerated room before it was artificially ripened by pumping in ethylene gas to make it look red for you. The taste of that compared to one that you grow in your own garden at home or you get from the farmer's market, there's a good reason to be eating real food. The real tomato is going to have more nutrients and is going to be better for you. The other one was picked while it was green, before the nutrients fully developed. And gosh, it just doesn't taste as good. So as close as you can get to the farm is better. And I think if you're doing that, it almost doesn't matter what you're eating, as long as it's as close to real food as you can get. So that's the eat smart. Make it food. Don't eat too much. Okay, activity. Move more. I'm cheating when I say move more. I've got 3 steps in this that I think everyone should follow. Sit less, move more, exercise every day. I'm not sure why this happens all the time, but people in our world, and I'm guilty of this right now, but I'm going to put the blame on Diane a little bit because she brought me in here, insist on trying to slowly kill us by making us sit for long periods of time. Right? If anyone feels the need to get up and stretch, please feel free to do that. One of the things that has changed over the years in America is we sit a lot more than we did 100 years ago. Say, I like to look back at 100 years ago. And there are actually some great studies of old order Amish communities that a colleague of mine did, where they went and they looked at what the old order Amish people ate, and looked at their activity level. And the big difference as far as kind of the sort of the nutrient content of their food and their activity was activity, right? Obesity and diabetes and heart disease are rare in Amish communities because they're so active, like 5 to 10 times more active on a daily basis than the average American. And so, but because people who live that kind of lifestyle or who work on a farm or who are laborers, they move all day long, right? Most of us, I'm guessing, spend our days with butts in chairs. And then when we get a chance to get our butt out of our chair, we put our butt in another chair. And then when we go home, we put our butt on a bigger, more comfortable chair, right? So it's just moving from one seat to another. And that actually has negative health effects that are similar to not exercising, spending too much time sitting. So make opportunities to get up and move. If it's to get a drink of water, to go to the bathroom, to just stand up and stretch once in a while, get out of the chair, it can make a huge difference. No joke, even breaking up, sitting so you don't spend an hour at a time sitting has been shown in studies to reduce the risk of weight gain and diabetes and a whole host of problems. It sounds stupid, but it's true. We also need to look for ways to move more. It is so easy nowadays to not move even when we're not in chairs. You can go to the store on the way home and you can circle around for the VIP parking spot. You can try and trick yourself into thinking that it's quicker. But my students did some research years ago where they show it actually takes twice as long when you look for the VIP parking compared to just taking the first available spot and walking into the store. So don't try and fool yourself. Elevators instead of stairs. There's so many ways that we can reduce our activity. We need to look for ways to be more active. And we need to exercise every day. And exercise doesn't necessarily mean sweating it out in the gym, but it means dedicating time for the purpose of being active every day. One of the nice things that we know is that you can do it through what we think of as exercise, like going for a brisk walk, or you can do it through some other activity like yard work or housework Basically, anything that gets you moving, and if you're doing it like you want to get it done, that counts as activity. It's about the same intensity as a brisk walk. A minimum goal should be 30 minutes a day. There are obvious added benefits of doing structured exercise. Cardio exercise, walking is an example, jogging, using any of the number of different types of equipment you can find in a gym. Strength, doing things to improve strength is very important, not just for muscular strength, but as we all age, being able to do activities of daily living, right? Maintaining muscle strength to be able to do the things that we need to do. And it also enhances bone mass. We think of this mostly for women who are at higher risk of osteoporosis, but the same thing is true in men. As men age, we lose bone mass, and strength training is the best way to maintain and build that bone density. So the activity, 30 minutes of activity a day is absolutely key. Beyond that, using that time to do structured exercise has additional benefits that go along with that. And you can find, if you were to look, these activity pyramids. It's like the food pyramid. You eat most of the stuff at the bottom, so you do most of the stuff at the bottom, which is be active all the time, right? Limit sitting time, move as much as you can. Make time for aerobic activity. Make time, that 30-minute walk every day. And then adding in some resistance and flexibility training, and limiting time being sedentary and not moving. And so this kind of gets us to the same place through this pyramid idea. If you are not someone who exercises, or if you have not exercised for a long time, there are a lot of really good ways to do aerobic, strength, and flexibility training without going to a gym and lifting weights or running on a treadmill. In fact, if you have an iPhone, there's probably hundreds of apps. There are programs you can do at home in 20 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 5 minutes, some of them, that will help improve your flexibility and your strength. And if you spend that little bit of time in addition to the 30-minute walk or something that you do every day, you can see some really incredible results coming from that. I say 30 minutes, but more is better, in that more could come in the form of a longer time, or it could come in the form of more intense. So a 30-minute jog might be equivalent to a 60-minute walk as far as health benefits are concerned. So more is better. Sometimes I see things that say the sitting is the new smoking, and I'm not really convinced that that's true, because I think they're completely different. But it does raise the idea that sedentary time is not good for us. And a lot of people think that the chair is bad, right? The worst, I heard someone say, the worst invention, the best invention, does anyone know what the best invention is? It's the toothbrush. But if you think about it, it is. The worst invention, they say, is the chair, right? That's done a lot of damage to us. And it is true. If you take someone who exercises for an hour every day, and they spend the rest of their day sitting at work and at home, they are going to be worse off health-wise than someone who does not exercise but doesn't sit so much. I mean, that's how sitting for long periods of time undoes the benefits of exercise. You can do yourself a great favor by not sitting. Or, as I see some of you doing, not sitting still, right? Not sitting still. I actually have a couple students who are working on a desk exercise program where they're going to put together a program where every hour during the workday for a week, they'll have take a break and do this, take a break and do that, so that people who work at the university sitting in offices all day, by the end of the week, will have gone through a stretching and strengthening each day for each major muscle group. It gets them out of the chair for 2 to 3 minutes. I'm not expecting people to have miraculous weight loss or reverse diabetes by doing that, but it certainly gets us in the right direction. I mean, this is now even the sort of thing that becomes what we see in comics. So they hire Dogbert to tell about the health benefits of standing, and his conclusion is, standing be good. And that's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much it. Does anyone have a stand-up desk or a sit-stand desk or a treadmill desk? No treadmill desk? Sit-stand desks? Those are are really nice because when you're doing something where you can stand, you can stand. And when you're doing something that you really is better, that you feel better doing sitting down, you can. They have some where you push a button and it raises up, and there's others you have to lift up, and there's a whole bunch of, have you seen the treadmill desks where you can walk on the treadmill all day? I know people who have those, and they like them, except if you're someone who likes to spread out when you work, that's not going to be a good solution. I need space when I work. I'd spread papers out all over. So that wouldn't really work for me. But having a desk where I could stand part of the day would work really nicely for me. So those are kind of some solutions. Well, this whole thing has a name. It's called NEAT, N-E-A-T, Non-Exercise Activity Thermogenesis, which is a super geeky way of saying calories you burn by moving when you're not really moving. So going from sitting to standing, and you can find things online where they say, instead of sitting to talk on the phone, standing to talk on the phone, and it'll estimate how many calories you burn in a week by doing that. Taking the dog for a walk rather than letting the dog out the back door to run around the yard. Little things like that. I don't really think that you could practically develop a weight loss program around this, but I do think that these little things add up and work. And there have been some studies done where they find that people that sit still more at work tend to weigh more than people who still sit but move a lot more. You know the people that can't sit still and they're up and down out of their chair all day, and if you're in the cubicle next to them, you hear their chair squeaking all day long? They're actually doing something good. You should join in, have a noisy chair competition. Because it's the sitting and not moving that's the problem. The sitting that's mixed in with periods of getting up out of the chair is far less hazardous for us health-wise. And so, this is a real thing that people are talking about now, and it is something that matters. And combining the sitting less with the moving more and the taking time to be active really will go a long way. There's a lot of evidence to suggest, and I'm on board with this, that if you're going to worry about one thing, assuming you don't smoke, activity is probably the one to worry about first, because you can undo a lot of damage of a poor diet through physical activity, but you can't undo the hazards of inactivity by eating, right? And so I don't know, I'm biased, but this is key to good health. Okay, so everyone knows you're not supposed to smoke. Everyone knows you're supposed to eat healthy food, whatever that is, and everyone knows you're supposed to exercise. I have probably not told you anything you don't know. What I think people minimize is the negative health effects of stress and how stress can impact our health. And I will add in with stress not getting enough sleep, because what happens to our bodies when we're under chronic stress is very similar to what happens to our bodies when we're not getting enough sleep. The physiological effects, the hormonal signaling, all of that is very, very similar. It's a different type of stress. Now, you're under a lot of stress and you don't get enough sleep and you think you're some kind of a superhero, but you're not. Well, you're a superhero in a bad way, I suppose. You're the evil villain of health. It turns out that stress and not getting enough sleep can undo some of the benefits you get from good nutrition and exercise. So you might be exercising and getting some health benefit from that, but if you're not managing the stress and the sleep, you're gonna lose some of that benefit along the way. And chronic stress is people don't talk about it as much as they should, and I think because we've been kind of led to believe that this stress is good for us, that being busy and not having enough time means that we're somehow more effective. But I think, and you might say that to your boss, like, oh no, boss, I'm really, I'm firing on all 8 cylinders now. But in your head, you're thinking, oh my gosh, if I could just get rid of some of this, I could do everything so much better, right? And so I think we're kind of taught that this stress is good, but it really isn't. The first step is to figure out what's causing the problems, and to the extent you can, modify them. I mean, I hear people say, you've got to get rid of all the stuff that causes you stress. Well, that's pretty much everything. So you can't do that. And so what you have to do is you have to figure out a way to minimize it to the extent that you can. You're never going to get rid of it, but can you modify it in some way? And more importantly, can you change the way you respond to it, the stress response, right? And you've probably seen, or heard that, if you're say driving somewhere and you're kind of feeling the road rage sneak in, and you just take a deep breath and relax, it kind of makes it all go away. And little things like that don't seem like they would do much can have a big impact on managing stress. And the key is to learn how to do that. So we're talking with stress, it's both the long-term chronic stress, and it's also the individual little things, the coworker that drives you crazy, or the person who's driving too slow when you're trying to get somewhere. We can't get rid of all that, but we can change the way that we react to it. That's something that we do have some control over. I believe that the one thing that would solve the stress problem and the sleep problem for almost everyone is time management. I mean, if you think about it, it's not so much the number of things we have to do, it's trying to fit them all in a 24-hour day, right? It's a time problem. And so managing time and dedicating time to the things that are important becomes the key to making this work. And I think, you look at stress. Taking on too much, another way to say that is you can't fit it in the time you have. You need to manage your time, fit things in that will fit into the time you have. And the road rage. No one gets road rage when they're driving somewhere they don't want to go, as slow as possible, hoping to hit all the red lights, right? It's when you're late. It's when time is not on your side. So I think that time is the key to all of this. And of course, time management can help you get to bed when you're supposed to so that you can get enough sleep. So I'm a big believer in that. I think that stress has become so much a part of our lives that we turn it into almost like it's a joke, right? So what is it? Well, it's the confusion when your mind overrides your desire to choke the living you-know-what out of someone. And that's it, right? It's that there's this dissonance between what you wish was happening and what is happening that creates stress. So this whole stress idea is a really good thing for us. It's how we're here today, because our great-great-grandparents who lived in caves way back in the day had this stress response when they encountered, say, a saber-toothed tiger or a woolly mammoth or something like that. The stress response is how people survived, yeah? And so we, of course, inherit this along with everything else. And we find that the stress response involves the nervous system in the brain, but hormones that affect all the tissues in the body and cause our heart rate to go up and our blood pressure to go up, and cause changes, long-term changes in our heart and in our blood vessels. It changes hormones that regulate blood glucose, that regulate cortisol, that regulate other hormones that are related to energy storage and release that can help contribute to obesity. It shifts fuels from being stored one place to another. And so it has these very, very widespread effects. This stress response is something that is built into us. It's called the fight or flight response, right? And so it's not the sort of thing we can just get rid of. What we can do is manage how it affects us. Well, one of the best ways to manage this, and one of the best ways to reverse some of the damage that comes from this, is regular exercise. On a psychological level and on a physical level, physical activity can undo much of the damage of stress and stop that response to some extent. What's interesting is the response in your body that happens during exercise is very similar to the response that happens during stress. But when you're really stressed out in your office, that is very different than having those same things happening when you're going for a walk. It is very different. Long-term effects, it can cause depression and anxiety and poor sleep. It can affect the heart and the blood vessels, increase the risk of heart disease, affect the stomach and the GI tract, affect hormones, has these widespread effects that affect almost every organ system and are linked to many, many, many diseases. So the way to fix it, of course, is by doing a whole bunch of stuff to help manage stress. And there's any number of, go to the spa and relax. A lot of these things on here are relaxation. And relaxation, I think, is another way of taking time, right? It's taking time away from everything else. We're talking about meditation and the benefits of meditation. But a lot of that undoubtedly comes from just taking time to shut down, whether or not you're doing a proper meditation, but just that time, just that shutdown time can be incredibly restorative. I would like to point out a couple things on here, time management being one of them, since that's a source of stress for a lot of people, and exercise, which is more effective than almost anything in reducing the effects of stress. If that seems like too much work, you can do it this way. Go on the internet and get this printed out and put it in your desk and just bang away until you feel better. But I don't know that that'll work. You're moving. Put it on the wall and stand up and do it, and then maybe you've got something. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so quitting smoking, eating right, being active, reducing stress, and getting enough sleep all sounds great, except those things really are hard to do. So the real trick here, I think, is finding a way to make it work for you. If you ask anyone who has tried and failed to start an exercise program, to lose weight, to quit smoking, they know what they need to do. It just didn't work. Or it worked for a while and then stopped working, right? And so there's nothing wrong with, I mean, you can lose weight following any diet. You can take the most ridiculous, unhealthy diet in the world, and you can lose weight on it. But is that going to be effective for the next year or 5 years or 10 years? No way, because usually it's so ridiculous, it's not something that will really work for you. So the trick is to find something that will actually work for you in the long run. And obviously making it a priority is key. Again, time. You know, if you want to start exercising, you need time to exercise, right? That has to be on your calendar. People tell me all the time, oh, I don't have time to exercise. And I say, show me your calendar. Oh, look at this, there's 3 hours in the evening. Oh, but that's American Idol. Like, okay, well, let's set some priorities, yeah? And almost everyone that tries to improve their health has tried in the past in some way and have experience. I like to tell people, I do a lot with weight loss, and say, you are your own expert into what does and doesn't work for you. And trying the same thing over and over. Have you ever heard that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different response? I mean, think of the people, and don't raise your hand if this is you, but who go on the same diet every year. And for 2 months are doing great, and then it falls apart, and then on January I'll try again. Well, there's something about that isn't working, right? And so, you know, what does work and what doesn't, and make those things happen. Seeking help from others, I think, you know, programs like a wellness program where there's a group of people that are doing it, even though you're not working in teams in this one, I'm told, you have people around you who are kind of doing the same thing as you are, right? And there is definitely strength in numbers, and you can get a lot of good ideas and a lot of good support from other people. And getting your friends and family involved are key. I think, you know, the time management part is important. You know, someone who wants to lose weight and change the way they eat, well, they have to have time to go shopping. They have to have time to cook the food. They have to make time to do this. And then if you're going to change the way you eat, and you're the one that prepares the meals for your family, you better have your family on board, because otherwise that's not going to work. It's similar to someone who wants to quit smoking, but their spouse is still a smoker. I mean, that's a situation that just is incredibly difficult. So you've got to get the people around you on board in order to make this realistically work. And I have, over the years of doing weight loss programs, loads of examples of people who either have or have not made that work. There's one woman who, for almost a 2-month period of time, was cooking 2 separate dinners every night, one for her and one for her family. I'm surprised she made it 2 months doing that, because they didn't have that support. So the trick is to find out how to do it. Just following the diet or just following the exercise program is not enough. So we talk about time. Here's how the average American spends their day. The dark blue is leisure time, and that's about 3.5 hours. If you might not be able to see this, but television is 2 hours of that 3 hours. So when people say, oh, I don't have time to exercise, they probably do. It's just probably buried in there, and it just seems like there isn't time for it. You know, and I love this idea of time. What fits your busy schedule better? Exercising 1 hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day. And you know, this is a funny way of saying, like if it's important to you, you'll make the time for it, right? And that's the key, is The people who are successful doing these things are people who say, this is a priority. It may not be the number one priority, but it's up there in the top 2 or top 3 with work and family and other obligations, that it has to fit in there. And that's one of the first things to go on the schedule, whether it's one you write down or whether it's one you keep in your head. And I think that's really important. So we've got this list here, right? If you're a non-smoker, you don't need to worry about the first one, but changing what you eat and exercising and managing stress and making it work for you. And I look at this and I think that's, those words on there, that's an awful lot of work. That's an awful lot of work. And where do you start? I mean, there are a lot of people, probably some of you in this room, who really need to change what you eat and really need to start exercising and really need to manage stress. It's so much to do. A good question is, if you can't take it all on at once, is it okay to do it bit by bit? And the answer is yes. Anything you do is going to have benefits, and I would recommend starting with physical activity. Physical activity can undo much of the damage of all of those other things. It's something that really anyone can do, and little bits make a big difference. And if you dedicate yourself to walking for 30 minutes a day, and that's the only thing you do for a month, you've got a month of succeeding at some positive health change before you start tackling some other ones. Obviously, jumping in and getting everything right on the first try is going to get you to your goal quicker, but there's nothing wrong with taking it piece by piece. This is kind of an old quote, but basically, exercise is seen as this sort of fun thing you do in your free time, or not fun thing you do in your free time. But we should really think of it as medicine, right? It has effects, in a lot of cases, bigger effects than medications for most of the common health problems that people have. And now there's actually a program called Exercise as Medicine, which is designed to teach physicians to ask their patients about physical activity and to prescribe exercise. Now, the difference is the doctor writes on a note, you should exercise. Where do you take that? Right? There's no pharmacy. So I tell my students a great job for them would be to have an office at the end of the hall in the physician's office, and when you leave your doctor, you stop in there and say, my doctor gave me this, and my students, Lori Comshaw would be a good one. She could say, here's what you need to do. Right? That's right. We haven't gotten that far yet. We tell people to do it, but we don't. There's no exercise pharmacy, right? And there should be. There really should be. We can really keep this simple, and you can take the dog for a walk every single day, even if you don't have a dog, right? I heard someone say that years ago, and I thought that is just absolutely perfect, right? You get home from work. How many of you have dogs? You get home from work, you take your dog for a walk, right? First thing, take your dog for a walk today, even if it's an invisible dog. I don't recommend the leash because people look at you like you're crazy, but take the dog for a walk. And then, of course, there's a way around everything. And so for me, pictures like this is just the best. I mean, this is absolutely the best. I've got another one of a woman sitting on a chair that's on a treadmill, and her feet are moving on the treadmill, but she's sitting on a chair, and I just think that's perfect. I love pictures like that. It makes my day when I find something like this. So there's a wrong way to do it too, I suppose. If you have any questions or want to get in touch with me, my email's there. I spend my days at USCA, and we're getting ready for classes to start next week, so we're in the chaos phase a little bit. But I'm always happy to answer questions and hear from people. I tweet, and I have a blog and the newspaper column in the Aiken Standard on Mondays, and there it is. I'm that guy. I'm that guy. I've been called worse, so I'll take that guy. And we have a few minutes. I'm happy to answer questions about any of this stuff or really anything else. If I don't know the answer, I will make something up. No, I won't. I will not answer anything I don't know. But I'm happy to answer questions about things. I'm sure you guys have something in your brain. Yeah.
Real food is another way of saying clean eating. You hear about clean
Yeah, you hear about clean eating. Here's the problem with clean eating is it's probably good, but no one knows what it is. And what's clean and what's not clean, and who decides? I think that, clean eating is probably good, but I haven't really dug into it, but I'm sure there's some crazy stuff in there. There always is. There's always something crazy in there. But yeah, I mean, that's the idea, right? Is you're eating food, right? One of the things they say is don't eat anything that has a label on it, right? If it's in a box or a bag with a label on it, that's not real food. It's food that started as food at one point and then has turned into something else completely. Yeah, I mean, that's the idea.
If it goes bad, you can eat it. If it doesn't go bad, you don't eat it.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah. Well, you know, I think that's exactly right. I think, yeah. It's food. I mean, the end result is you're eating actual real food and you're not eating processed food. And I think that probably makes a bigger difference than worrying about how many calories from fat and what type of fat you're getting and the different kinds of oils that you're cooking with. Yeah, yeah.
I've always heard not to cook in the microwave also.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but why?
I've heard it changes the food.
Yeah, but heating food changes it anyway. Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I think in some ways cooking in the microwave might actually be better. You can have shorter cooking times, but no.
Less processed stuff goes in the microwave.
Well, that's it. Yeah, right. So if it's something that it has directions on it that say heat it in the microwave, don't eat it. Yeah. But I just don't, I'm trying to think if you want to cook, I don't know, you have some green beans that you picked from your garden and you cut them up and you want to cook them. I'm not sure that cooking in the microwave makes them any worse than cooking them on a stovetop or marginally eating them raw. Yeah.
How do you determine what's enough sleep?
Yeah, right. So 8 hours, but then they say 7 to 9 hours, and then it varies for people. And then I don't know if any of you read about this, but there's something about sleep cycles. You're the natural cycles of your brain, and if you catch yourself at the end of one of those sleep cycles, that's better than if you wait until you're in the middle of the next one. And this happens all the time, right? You wake up 15 minutes before your alarm and you feel wide awake. And then you go back to sleep and then the alarm rings and you're on 6 snoozes. So I think that's individual. I think I can't imagine a world like this, but where I don't feel sleepy in the afternoons or evenings. Like, I imagine if you can get through a whole day without just really feeling like you're dragging, you probably got it right. And when you figure that out, tell me how. But I do think there's some individual variation. I've seen things where people can hack their sleep down to like 4 30-minute naps in a day or something, and I don't buy that. There's a lot that goes on in the brain when you sleep that you do need a big block of time. How long that block of time is, I don't know. But you know if you don't get it right. You know when it's not enough. So more than that, I guess. Yeah.
Food question.
Yeah.
You don't have a garden.
Yes.
You don't live next to a farmer's
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on frozen versus canned vegetables?
Frozen is better. Frozen, usually what we say is fresh is best. Frozen is a really close second to fresh, and canned is kind of a distant third. One of the problems with canned vegetables is they cook them first and they lose a lot of their nutrients. And then you cook them, heat them up in the water with a lot of the nutrients in the water. How many of you drink the water when you cook the corn? No, that's disgusting. So you're losing a lot of the vitamins. Frozen vegetables are picked when they're fresh and flash frozen, so you heat them up and they're essentially fresh. A lot of fresh vegetables, depending on what you mean by fresh, is the tomato that goes on a 2,000-mile journey and is sitting out in the produce department. Is that fresh or not? No, it's not fresh. But so I think frozen's a good alternative. But you have to be careful because a lot of frozen vegetables, they add sauces and things in them, which, guess what's in those sauces? Lots of salt and lots of sugar. And you can take vegetables that have almost no calories and lots of nutrients, and you can turn them into something that's a lot like a cheeseburger calorie-wise by adding those things in.
What are your thoughts on organics?
Yeah, okay. So organic food is good for a lot of reasons. There's definitely some environmental benefit. There's a lot of research into what organic food does to the ground it's grown in, and that all seems to be really good. The evidence on is it more nutritious is conflicting. Some studies say yes, a tiny little bit, and other studies say no by a tiny little bit, and no one really knows. It's organically grown produce is probably as good or a tiny bit better than non-organically grown. I think from a philosophy standpoint, it's a lot better. The problem is it's really expensive. And the problem I have with saying organic is best is someone might leave and think, well, if I can't get organic vegetables, then what's the point of eating vegetables? And if you're thinking, if your choice is between no vegetables and canned vegetables, eat the canned vegetables. I think if you have the means and you can get it, organic is a good choice. The health benefits, we don't have the conclusive evidence for that. It's probably better. I would say it's probably better, but not enough better that you should bankrupt yourself trying to eat all organic.
Isn't organics kind of a nebulous, non-standard term?
Yes.
What
What's
somebody
organic?
calls organic
I know.
Sometimes doesn't
I
mean
know.
a thing. They just stamp
Yeah.
organic on there so they can charge a higher price.
And there are some there's an apple farm that I've been to up in North Carolina, and they are not an organic farm because when they need to, they apply pesticides to trees that need it, right? So they can't get the organic certification. Almost all of their apples are organic apples. They just can't get the certification because when necessary. You think about antibiotic use in livestock, and that's a big no-no, right? But if you've got a sick cow, sometimes that's a good idea, right? And so we go so far from we can't use this that maybe there's a way to use it that is appropriate rather than just using it all the time everywhere. And I think one of the good things about organic is it gets us away from the pesticides and the herbicides that are applied when they're unnecessary just because it's easy. And certainly those things have a health effect on us. I believe that a lot of those things, you see the research, oh, there's no evidence this harms people, but you're only getting this tiny little bit. And one of the things that I wonder about, and I think we'll learn in the future, is you take this little tiny bit of that thing over here, and you combine it with a little tiny little bit of this here, and this processed thing you've been eating since you were 2 years old every day the studies show there's no effect, but a little bit here. And you start adding up these little bits, and then that adds up to something. And that's something that I won't say it keeps me awake at night, but I think someday we're going to learn, and we're going to say, oh my gosh, what have we been doing? So from one standpoint, it's good, but it's not the only way to do it.
There is a certifying organization?
For organic? Oh, yeah.
A stamp or a
There is. The USDA has an organic stamp, and if you look for it, you can find it. The number on the things is different, too, and the price is different. So if you see bananas next to each other and there's 59 cents a pound and 89 cents a pound, the 89 cents a pound one are the organic ones. And here's the other thing. If you're worried about pesticides or things that are sprayed on the food, if it's something you peel, it probably isn't as big a deal if it's something you don't peel, right? Now, that doesn't do much to the farmer in South America who's spraying pesticides all day with no protective equipment, but yeah. Yes?
I'm happy as I can be for all the vegetable eaters in the world. And it's pretty easy to go down to that farmer's market and get some of that.
Yeah.
How do I get my cow on my plate?
How do you get your cow on your plate? So if you go to the farmer's market in Aiken, there is a farm called Mybeck Farms where you can buy cows. You can get some friends together and buy a cow. And they sell meat that comes from their farm that they butcher at their farm. It's all grass-fed, and I don't know if they only eat organic grass or what, but yeah, you can find that. And here's the thing too, is if you want meat, and even if you go to the supermarket and you buy meat from the meat case, that's meat that has been butchered. A cow comes in, probably a frozen cow, and the butcher cuts it up and then puts it out there. But if you go to the frozen food section and you get the pre-packaged whatever it is, that is very likely heavily processed meat.
So the meat counter,
Yeah,
that's probably pretty good.
yeah, it probably is. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a program referring to that, the folks at the farmer's market, at least in Aiken, that sell meat. There's a program in South Carolina, and there's probably similar programs in other states, where they certify that as locally grown.
Yep.
They identify the farm,
Yes.
they give you contact
Yep.
information. So you can actually talk to the farmer that grew that cow or produce and other products, but it's a certified product.
yeah. And
You know exactly.
the Kroger in Aiken sometimes has regional produce, which is good. And you know, then beyond the nutrition, there's the economic benefits. And I mean, this is, you know, you can link almost everything to good eating.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Getting away from food all.
No, okay, that's fine.
You talked about smoking.
Yeah.
And the patches and the.
Yeah.
smoking quick. What about vaping? 'Cause I've heard.
Oh, okay, so, right. Like e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes. So,
With the young people.
yeah, so, okay. If you smoke tobacco cigarettes, that probably is a step in the right direction. That's so new. That kind of came out of nowhere and became really popular really quickly. No one really knows what the long-term health effects of e-cigarettes are. There's some preliminary evidence that suggests that they're bad, that the chemicals that are in that are just as bad for you as the chemicals that are in tobacco smoke. It's better for me if you smoke an e-cigarette and I'm around you. But anyone who is involved in smoking and health says that is not a safe alternative. And the reason people say that, and I say that, is we don't know that it's a safe alternative. And it probably isn't. And probably 10 or 15 years from now, we'll realize that it wasn't. Isn't that the way these things go? Something seems like a great idea, and then we find out later it wasn't such a good idea. But it's probably a step in the right direction, but a short-term step. That would be my take on it.
Along those same lines, a lot of young people are, instead of smoking cigarettes, they smoke this hookah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, what is your take on that?
Bad.
That's what I,
It's bad.
that's what I thought.
I mean, the only marginal benefit is that people get together and do it in a social environment. And we know there are benefits of being in social environments. But that's this little tiny positive. No, bad. Very bad. It's incredibly popular. The flavored tobacco, people love them. It's great fun. Everyone likes it. No. I mean, it's smoking. It's smoking. And think about this. The states that are legalizing marijuana, and people are now smoking marijuana who didn't smoke cigarettes, what are we going to find for health effects of that? Right? I mean, how long is it going to take for that to start to show up? Or people who quit smoking cigarettes and start smoking marijuana, they probably feel great, but long-term health, what's going on? Do we need to be done? I guess you guys have to go back to work.